Hey, what's up guys, Matt with the Movement System. In this video, we're gonna cover 4 training methods that elite athletes use that you might not know about. Having coached thousands of athletes over the last 10 years, ranging from middle schoolers all the way up to NFL professional athletes, I've learned a lot of different training methods that I had no idea about even for my first few years of coaching. So in this video, we're gonna break down each of the 4 methods, exactly how you use it, and implement them into your programming to make your athletes better and faster and stronger. Let's go ahead and get started with method number 1, and that is extensive plyometrics. Oftentimes when we think of plyometrics, we think of things like box jumps or broad jumps, and we don't necessarily think of lower intensity things like jumping rope. But for beginners all the way through professional athletes, there's a huge benefit to adding 5 to 10 minutes every day or every other day of really low intensity preparatory plyometrics. These are movements like jump ropes or like small skips and hops that prepare your body for more intensive jumps. Specifically, these prepare your tendons and your muscles and your joints to be able to handle the demands of higher intensity athletic movements. Again, whether you're a beginner or a runner who doesn't jump a lot, or whether you're someone who's an NFL athlete or an NBA athlete who's jumping tons, these are still beneficial to include in your program to prepare your body for the demands of training. The way that I like to program these is 30 to 60-second sets of movements focusing on rhythm and coordination. The goal here isn't to jump as high as you can, but rather to be smooth and rhythmic in your jumping and your movement. It takes athletes a lot of time to reinforce movement patterns and to learn how to move smoothly, so this is something you want to practice daily or at least every other day. This is really preparatory for the whole body, but especially for the hips, the knees, the foot, and the ankle to be able to handle demands of training. This will help reduce your risk of plantar fasciitis and tendinopathies at the Achilles tendon or the patellar tendon. Overall, you don't have to overcomplicate this. Just focus on 5 to 10 minutes at the start of your session every other day. All right, training method number 2, and this is one that I think is way overlooked and not often utilized, and that is something called an overcoming isometric. This involves trying to move an immovable object. For example, setting the barbell in the rack and trying to lift that bar with no weight on it, but having it fixed against the rack so that way you can't move it. This allows you to ramp up to truly maximal force production. It's kind of like lifting weights without the satisfaction of actually lifting the weight. The way that I coach these movements is with a 3-second build up and then a 3-second maximal isometric. This is really important because you don't want to go straight into that maximal isometric, or you could strain a muscle, but with that 3-second build up to a really intense contraction, you're much more safe. Some examples of overcoming isometrics that I think are particularly effective for athletes include the mid-thigh pull or a calf raise overcoming isometric. Another good one would be a leg extension isometric as well. And then for throwing athletes specifically, I think it's really beneficial to find a throwing position and then to try to press or rotate really hard in that throwing position. For example, a baseball pitcher might use about the middle of the layback phase of a throw and then push really hard into a strap that's fixed against a rack. If you really want to get fancy with your training and see your athletes progress and get stronger in these positions, you can even use a crane scale and measure the force production in these specific positions and see how that helps them throw harder. This is a really good way to show measurable progress to your athletes, higher force production, and help your athletes see how this training is actually resulting in higher performance for them on the field. The overall benefit of overcoming isometrics: really high force production, actually relatively low fatigue, even though it's really intense. There's not a lot of eccentric load, so it's not going to give you a lot of huge muscle fatigue. You can build position-specific strength, and it's fairly safe to do. All right, athlete training method number 3 is called dynamic effort lifting. Now this term originated with Westside Barbell in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm gonna give you some of their numbers specifically, but this has been expanded more broadly to involve moving sub-maximal weight really fast. Some of the Westside specific numbers would involve using 75 to 85% 1-rep max loads for lower body, including band tension, for around 2 to 5 reps. That allows those 2 to 5 reps to be really explosive because it's a weight that you could do 85, 90% even, but you're focusing on 75 to 85% and moving really fast. For upper body, you're shooting for around 50 to 60% 1-rep max, plus adding bands on top of that for 3 repetitions. That said, the protocols can be adjusted to fit your needs. There's a lot of benefit to 40%, 50%, 60% 1 rep max, as long as the intent is to move as fast as possible through the concentric or the shortening portion of the rep. It's particularly effective to use bands for this, so that way you can accelerate through the end of the repetition and maximize power development. It's a really good technique for improving power, for improving acceleration, and it also helps you vary the joint stress that you get from maximal effort, really heavy lifting, to give athletes a little bit more longevity. All right, and the fourth and final athlete training method that is really beneficial for athletes is zone 2 cardio. Now, this will be most beneficial for aerobic or hybrid athletes like myself, but also may have some benefit for recovery and overall health and cardiovascular health, even for more power-based athletes. Zone 2 cardio involves doing steady state cardiovascular training around 60 to 70% of maximum heart rate. I have entire videos dedicated to this type of training that I'll link in the description below. Some of the benefits of Zone 2 cardio include cardiovascular health and building true aerobic adaptations to your heart and your cardiovascular system. It's also very low in terms of fatigue because it's not very intense. It's very recoverable relative to threshold work where you're running a really hard mile and you might be fatigued for a few days after that. A lot of athletes can accomplish this Zone 2 work through skill training. So if they're doing shooting drills and other drills where they're working on technique with soccer, basketball, whatever your sport is, you can accomplish that by generally spending an hour or so of sport practice at a slightly elevated heart rate, around 60 to 70%. But that said, if athletes are off season, they're not getting a lot of sport practice, then you really do want to supplement this and build that aerobic system with dedicated Zone 2 work. It can just be steady state on the bike, on the treadmill, or you can even cycle through multiple modalities, 15 minutes on the rower, 15 minutes on the bike, 15 minutes jogging, etc., to really get this in. A good rule of thumb is at least 150 minutes per week. Aerobic endurance athletes are going to need to go much more than that. All right, so those are 4 training methods to work into your programming. If you don't have a program template, I actually have one that you can download for free in the description below. That way you can fill in sets, reps, and exercises for your athletes and make it look really professional. If you guys do have any other questions about training athletes, or if you want to check out some of the strength conditioning programs that we have available at the Movement System, I'll leave those in the description as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.